Britt, what's the latest response from Beijing in regards to Russia?
Well, China reiterated that it opposes sanctions, saying that wielding the stick of sanctions won't bring about peace. It also criticised NATO, saying that the alliance is responsible for bringing Russian and Ukrainian tensions to what it called breaking point. Let's take a listen to what Zhao Lijian, the foreign ministry spokesperson, had to say.
The moves by US-led NATO have pushed the Russia-Ukraine tensions to a breaking point. Looking away from its own responsibilities, the US instead criticised China's stance on Ukraine. Such an action is to suppress China and Russia in order to maintain US hegemony.
This rhetoric is kind of what we've heard before, that Russia has legitimate security concerns, that Ukraine is complex, and that the US is responsible for sowing fear and panic in the region. But just this week, Chinese President Xi Jinping called it a war for the first time, of course, stopping short of calling it an invasion. But certainly it looks like China is growing a little bit more alarmist when it comes to this issue. What we do know is that Moscow and Beijing have grown very close under Chinese President Xi Jinping. Even earlier this week, Wang Yi, the foreign minister, said that relations were rock solid. But it is a lot of pause for thought here, because the question now becomes that what will China do? How will it respond to these sanctions? Will it soften the blow when it comes to these sanctions? And in this regard, it has to tread very carefully. At the end of the day, Russia is a very good friend of China, but at the same time, the European Union and other Western allies, including Australia, are very important trading partners too. So it won't want to be seen to offset some of those punitive measures. That just won't play out with its Western trading partners well at all.
Xi Jinping wants to reunify China. He's made that very clear, which means one day taking Taiwan by force if necessary. How worried is Taiwan about this at this point?
Well, Laura, worried enough that it's going ahead with military drills this week. Next Wednesday and Thursday, China will conduct a series of live drills that will basically simulate an attack on its soil. So it'll simulate amphibious landing craft. It'll simulate warplanes attacking its territory. So that's interesting in one sense, but at the same time, we have to remember that on the day of the invasion of Ukraine, China continued to incur in military airspace in Taiwan. So Taiwan then alerted its level even higher, and Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen told the military to be on alert. It also said that it empathized with the Ukrainians because of the military threats and the intimidation that it faces itself. What we do know is that there isn't an unnecessarily unusual military build-up by China from the Chinese side. And these issues, it has to be said, are different in that China considers Taiwan already to be part of its territory, and that the one China policy is already very much accepted by many countries across the globe. However, what we do know is that these are two democracies, both on the doorstep of authoritarian regimes. And what we are dealing with more recently is an emboldened China, an emboldened Xi. Even the CIA director, William Burns, said that we cannot underestimate China. He was asked whether perhaps the Ukrainian war would give China more pause for thought, that perhaps it would give it some room to bring to the negotiation table, and that perhaps there is more room for discussion. But William Burns flat out said absolutely not, that we cannot underestimate China, that perhaps China is unsettled, rattled, surprised by the events that are unfolding in Ukraine. Perhaps it's even looking at the Ukrainian resistance and then just watching that very closely. But it must be said that countries across the world, countries especially in this region, will be watching this very closely, especially when you consider that US-China relations are at rock bottom. That goes to be said for an extent with Australian relations with the US as well. But no one will be watching China's movements and China's reaction to the war in Ukraine closer than Taiwan.
Yeah, indeed. Australia close behind that. Britt, thanks so much. We'll speak soon live there in Hong Kong.